This video was sponsored by Nebula. I'm so embarrassed that I forgot to put this on for the entire video. So this is me coming here to say that I look amazing in this crown, and I didn't do this the whole video, so egg on my face, but I'm still the motherfucking princess. And hell yeah, I'm the motherfucking princess. Why, hello there. This is a last minute video that I just kind of threw together because I had some feelings after watching the teaser trailer for the Queen Charlotte Bridgerton spinoff, and I just needed to kind of get them out of my head. So this is that. I apologize for it not being the neatest thing. Oh, but first of all, thank you to everybody who enjoyed the monster villain video. And I have something to announce. We have pins. I made a villain fucker and a monster fucker pin that are live right now on Nebula for pre-order. They look really good. And 50% of all of the proceeds will be going to the Okra Project, which is a New York-based grassroots charity that works with Black, trans, and gender non-conforming people. Pins and a good cause all mixed together. So if you like them, please buy. I think they are really cute, and I cannot wait to wear them myself.
I am the Queen.
So, Bridgerton is probably at this point one of Netflix's most successful intellectual properties, which is why it's getting this spin-off about the younger years of Queen Charlotte Mecklenburg-Sterlitz. And as a tie-in, Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes have penned a prequel series titled Queen Charlotte. It's all about the monarch and the tragic love story between her and King George III, because eventually, as we know, he will suffer from mental illness. And yes, it is the George III from the Revolutionary War. Now, I have been very vocal about the fact that I think that non-white people have a place in period dramas. I think that because of just how ubiquitous that type of show is, especially in the UK, that if we don't create room for non-white people to be in these roles, they will be cut out of opportunity. I think as someone who watches a lot of, like, especially Jane Austen adaptations, you can see the same sets of actors in all of these films. You know, if you watch The Crown, for example, the first 2 seasons, the person playing the Queen Mother has been working in period dramas for decades. Half of her career is being in adaptations of Jane Austen and different things like that. And so when I talk about opportunity that comes with this sort of race bending, that's what I mean. Long-standing opportunity in British media to create that kind of attention. The loyalty that I have to Colin Firth is because of him being Mr. Darcy in the best version of Pride and Prejudice. Like, absolutely. That has given him long-term cultural capital that he's been able to use into a long-standing career. And that's why I think that Black people and non-white people should be in period dramas, especially in the modern day where things are changing. There is no reason that Black and brown people can't be in adaptations of Jane Austen, of Dickens, of the Brontes. I think all of that can be done and be done tastefully and should be going on. But when it comes to Black people playing monarchs, British monarchs, and not like in a play aspect, not in like a theater aspect, something like that, but like portraying them in a way like Bridgerton is doing, is when things get a little messy. Because because slavery, let's be real about it, because of slavery, because of imperialism, because of what all of that means. When we go back in history, the first British monarch that funded ships that brought back enslaved African people as cargo was funded by Queen Elizabeth I. So after that, it becomes sort of problematic to portray this sort of laissez-faire concept of playing with race in a show like this that wants so badly to be both wish fulfillment but have some sort of commentary on racial politics. But you know what? Because it starts with Queen Elizabeth I, you know what that means? We can keep 6!
Grew up in the French court, oui, bonjour, life was a chore, so she set sail.
And I think part of the reason why I find this to be a little frustrating is because in the Bridgerton novels, the Queen is not a major character in it. That's been a show development. And what the show has done through having Queen Charlotte being played by a mixed race Black woman is elevate this rumor that I addressed in my only video about Bridgerton before, that Queen Charlotte had some very, very distant Black ancestry. And the show has definitely played into that, which I find to be fundamentally just really bad to do, because, like, again, if we do that when we're pulling not just one drop rule politics, we are pulling negative drop rule politics, because it would have been so far in her past, if she had it, that it would not be relevant to her at all. And there is no reason that she would be seen in any way as a Black woman. The rumor isn't even tied into her own time period. And it is based on simply the fact that she, in some portraits, has broad lips and a broad nose. You know, George III and Charlotte had 15 children, and most of them lived to adulthood. And one of those children would be the future William the Fourth, who was the king before Queen Victoria. And William in his early years was very much in favor of slavery. He was somebody who believed in the institution, mocked abolitionists. And even though eventually during his reign, I believe, you know, with George III, I believe his reign is when the slave trade ended. Slavery ended, I think, during the reign of, was during the reign of William IV is when it was finalized having ended. But it's not as if he was a proponent of ending it from his own regard. So you have a show that's about to highlight his parents and treat them as having some sort of racial blending. I mean, it's implied in this one little moment in the trailer that there is a racial element to this.
You are the first of your kind. You must secure your position.
And we've heard things like this throughout the show. I believe in the first season, it's sort of implied that, like, this Black nobility in Bridgerton verse is new.
Those very things are precisely what have allowed a new day to begin to dawn in this society. Look at our Queen. Look at our King. Look at their marriage. Look at everything it is doing for us, allowing us to become. We were two separate societies, divided by color, until a king fell in love with one of us. Love, your grace, conquers all.
That's the part of the show that I've never really enjoyed, because I would just rather it be wish fulfillment. Like, just let it be what it is. The moment you try and do this, bringing this sort of cultural commentary into it, you begin to lose the footing, because slavery absolutely would still be a factor, especially the fact that there were brown and Black nobility in the West at this time. I would highly recommend History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. Did a really good episode about Black aristocrats in the 18th century that were in England and France. All of them are impacted by their race. All of them are impacted by their phenotype, even if they're mixed race or otherwise. Therefore, it makes it just very intellectually dishonest to try and pretend as though, like, this would have been, you know what I mean? Like, don't do that. Just have it be like, they got a Black queen, let's just have it go. These elements of trying to bring, like, a racial element to it only reduce the ability of the text to do its job, which is to entertain us. Focus on hiring dark-skinned people and dealing with the colorism that y'all be doing. Deal with that. You don't have to, like, rewrite history for it. I just want to clarify. This is not me saying that I don't think that Black and brown people can never play royals post Queen Elizabeth I. I'm just saying, if you're going to do it, let's not put any commentary in it. Just do it, have it exist, and leave it at that. I do not think that it behooves us to constantly be putting these interracial romances that are supposed to be, like, saving Black people from being seen as, like, a lower class. You know what I mean? Like, those implications are just so ridiculous and ahistorical. And I also think that a huge part of it is that the book really kind of ticks me off, because Julia Quinn, as again I said in my previous video about Bridgerton, talked about the reason that she didn't write brown people in her books is because she wanted them to be able to have happy endings. She purposefully did not include us in her work. And now, because of Shonda and her work and her brand and the diversity that she brought to the intellectual property, she is now making more money than ever. Her brand is becoming even more popular, even though she did absolutely nothing to get the gains. Like, people who see the covers of these books, of the original Bridgerton series, and see brown faces on them will read those books, and they will be white people.
Somebody asked me that question recently about introducing more diversity into my books, and it's difficult. Because first, with the time period that I write in, I mean, some say, oh, well, it really was diverse. I'm like, well, not among the dukes. And granted, my people aren't quite as lofty as Eloise's, but it's tricky because, you read these Civil War romances, and they've been kind of out of fashion for a while, and you're like, isn't it interesting that, the heroine always seems to feel that her slave is really, truly her equal. And I'm thinking, well, she wasn't raised that way. She'd have to be pretty remarkable to have figured this out on her own. So if she's going to feel that way, you need to explain to me how that came about. And a lot of times they didn't. And so, I think, okay, I want to introduce diversity into my books. Maybe put a Jewish character in there. There were Jews in England at the time. But you know what? A lot of people really didn't like them. And for me to explain why my characters, who I like to think are fundamentally good and kind and true, suddenly find these people to be perfectly fine and, yeah, sure, marry him, no problem, we don't care. I'd have to come up with a really good explanation of how that came about. And that might have to be the story more than the actual love story. So it's tricky to do. For all the things I can do, I don't know what it's like to be in another person's skin. And I especially don't know what it means to be in another person's skin when their skin is so very different from mine.
And I just think that is fundamentally dishonest for her to not have to deal with the fact that she was not writing diverse Regency era fiction, but is now getting money and getting attention off of this race-bent show. This is the moment where I will shout out to JJ McAvoy, Aphrodite and the Duke. And then on the flip side, you have this argument about, like, well, where are the black stories? And we are getting them. There's going to be Chevalier is coming out soon, which I'm very excited about because, the Chevalier's story is so interesting. The casting looks good. The trailer was showing at the beginning of Emily, which I just finished talking about on a TikTok.
I realized the more I excelled, the less I was alone.
Were you always so competitive?
So it looks really good. But again, we are seeing a lot of times when these things are made, it's about these, biracial black exceptionalists in a very racist time period. And they're political. Like Belle is very much rooted in the isolating fact of being the only black person in this kind of space. Every time I see like a Mr. Malcolm's List, I get so excited because it's like, this is what I want there to be more of brown people telling these stories, just having these very organic, natural ways. Like, just like Mr. Malcolm's List is so great because it just allowed to be as black and brown as it wants to be and just goes with it. Just allows itself to just enjoy itself. And that's what I want from Bridgerton, to enjoy itself. And I think part of that is that's not having the monarchy there, like not having the literal kings and queens there, because they are symbols of oppression, and trying to transform them into something else is just inherently flawed when you're not going to actually deal with it. There was that Anne Boleyn TV series with Jodie Turner-Smith playing Anne Boleyn in it, and I gotta say, I did watch it, and it is just very boring. I mean, like, here's the thing. It was only, first of all, you know me. We team Aragon up in here, so it's already, like, to me, I'm like, whatever. But I just feel like it's just dull because how many times are we going to do the Boleyns, Like, this came out, there's another Boleyn thing that's on Netflix, like Blood, Sex, and Lies or whatever. Like, we done Anne Boleyn 65 million times, let's move on with it. She's not the problem in that production. It's just a very weirdly put together production, but because she's black, it becomes this whole backlash of like, well, why is she even playing Anne Boleyn? And I get that. Like, we do want to see black people and brown people being the leads of their own shows like this. The thing about that is that when it does happen, it gets nitpicked and torn apart to death. I mean, for as much grief as, Jodie Turner-Smith got for Anne Boleyn, equal amounts were given to The Warrior King because it was also not totally historically accurate. And I think that we have to remember that we also hold a lot of different standards for Black and brown text. I remember when Harder They Fall came out, I really overall enjoyed it, but I could not deal with the fact that they made Stagecoach Mary played by Zazie Beetz. I was like, Stagecoach Mary is a tall, dark-skinned, very butch-looking woman, and you're the chick from Atlanta. Like, no shade to you, get that bag, but like, that's not you, and you should have never been up for that role. And so when we're dealing with like this idea of putting Black people in anything, it always gets politicized, and people sometimes just don't know what to do with it. That's why I've always argued that I don't want to see a single Black person in Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey is the perfect case for erasure. There are a lot of people who don't understand the politics of what it means to be Black in these periods, and when they make these shows, we'll just put in this blanket diversity, try to add these like very hyper, just silly things. And to me, the Queen Charlotte trailer, like, do I hope it's fun and interesting? For the sake of people who enjoy it, yes. But I do wonder, like, well, where are the Black and brown romance authors getting their money from running their own series that are just as good, if not better than Bridgerton, that already include this kind of diversity? Because we are only seeing these period dramas with romance being successful, at least in this case, when it's an interracial couple that includes a white person. And with the new season being what it is, like, it's two white people together for the first time. So it's like, and let's be real, ain't nobody shipping this. So like, it's just like, you know, even though I love Penelope, but I have no interest in Colin. Like, we just try to have Benedict be bisexual child and just get the show on the road. Pure race band Brandy Cinderella. They keep trying to bring up this actual politics of Blackness and otherness into the show that it is not built to handle. Like it is just not built to handle it, and every time it appears, it actively ruins parts of the show for me, because I want to just be able to sit and enjoy it. And it's like, if you're gonna deal with race, deal with it. If the premise of this show is that in one generation, not even one generation, because of Queen Charlotte marrying George III, all of a sudden all these Black people could come into the British society. I'm like, girl, that don't even, like, even from a white perspective, okay? The British people didn't even like people marrying monarchs that were Spanish, okay? French, okay? Queen, do you know how many queens was out here foreign as hell and white, and everyone was like, we don't want this bitch in here, we want that bitch over there. Like, Charles the First's wife, everybody hated her. Mary Tudor married Philip II, everyone's like, not another Spaniard. Like, you know, like, that whole premise itself is just messy. So I just don't get the point of this. I don't get the point of focusing on the monarchy, because the monarchy is not what the show is about. The show is about this family fucking. So I just want to focus on that. And the gowns, and that you finally got, you know, dark-skinned people winning for once. I don't want to deal with this, because it isn't fun. It isn't fun to try and enjoy a show that wants so badly to offer the kind of colorblind casting and thoughtful entertainment of like a modern period drama that anyone can be cast in, and yet it still feels like it still can't help center whiteness and erase difficult conversations, but still wants to elevate the same people. Like, you can't have this, you just can't have it all the ways. You have to pick. And I just want the show to pick one. So it'll be interesting to see how Queen Charlotte deals with race, because it clearly has to. But it makes me so nervous. It just makes me so concerned. And again, like, her son literally, like, because that's the whole thing of, like, especially someone who, like, knows the history. It's like, her son literally is going to be, like, slapping abolitionists in the face. Because even if you want to say, like, okay, George III ended the slave trade, he still was, like, writing to, like, Lord Sandwich about how to secure Jamaica and Barbados and other islands, because they needed the slave colonies, because the slavery system still existed. Just because they got rid of the trade doesn't mean that slavery institution died. They're still making money in Jamaica, in Barbados, in all of these places. Again, he led the West India Committee in London. He circulated like pro-delivery speeches. He called it radical and misguided. He called it fanatical, like, and his actions and his defense of colonial slavery did help delay abolition. So you're going to tell me that I'm supposed to watch this happy interracial love story of these two people when in real life their son will go on to ensure that slavery exists a little bit longer? During the time of Queen Charlotte, there are abolitionists protesting slavery, boycotts of sugar, which comes up in Sanditon, which is a good period drama that deals with race. Like the reign of George III is when British abolition was really at its height. So how are you going to deal with that? Especially because the whole what if of Bridgerton is like, what if she got married and just flicked away slavery? And it's like, well, she didn't. She didn't. And her son helped promote it. And I also want to acknowledge that there are Black people out there who do not want to see Black people or other people of color in these kinds of stories anyway, who really fundamentally feel as if like this idea that legitimizing this period by putting Black and brown people in this era of aristocracy is just like a non-starter. And let me say this, I think that is a valid perspective. It's not a perspective that I share, obviously, but I do get it because I do think that there is value in saying we want to tell narratives that are different and more exploratory and fundamental to our own reality and not just be copy and pasted into a white setting. I think that is absolutely valid and true. I think that we can find a way to get our stories told by the right people and in the right ways, and I respect that perspective. I just also see the value in pushing back against this narrative that Black people didn't exist in Europe or in the world until enslavement, because that's just fundamentally untrue and is used as a weapon against us and as a way to, almost ghettoize us in history. And so that's why I still fuck with them in these period dramas, even though I totally respect and get that perspective. So yeah, I say watch Mr. Malcolm's List if you want an actual well-done Regency period drama where it's brown people having brown people behavior and having a good time. We also have the third season of Sanditon, which is going to have more Georgiana, and I have the screeners for it, and I'm so excited. That's going to be my gift. And there's a new Great Expectations coming out, which has a diverse cast, even though, of course, Pip and Miss Havisham still white because the tentpole characters also have to be white. The players around them get to be brown. As someone who both loves these things and like also can critique them, me saying that this is problematic doesn't mean that I think that you need to hate it, that you need to like not watch it. It's just more to say that as we are seeing this become more of a thing, a good thing, because again, I want these actors to get opportunities. I want British actors of color to get opportunities to have long-term stable payment through these period dramas. Because sadly, literally, I was watching Mrs. Wilson, where Ruth Wilson is playing her own great grandma, which is like already a trip. But like in one scene, it was fucking Jorah Mormont and Sir Barristan Selmy. And I'm like, do you see what happens when you get to just be a British white person? You just get to be in fucking period dramas all the fucking time, being in everything. And that's what I want for Black actors and brown actors. I want us to be everywhere, everything all at once in these period dramas too. Especially because half of everything they got for fucking taking it from us. So if y'all gonna imperialize, we better get checked too. I guess I just want the people behind the scenes to do a little bit of work on it, and maybe I'll be surprised, and maybe the show will actually touch on these things and touch on the slave trade. I think it'll be interesting to see how it affects that, considering the show itself, and that we haven't heard about slavery and imperialism on the show in any ways, even though that would still be going on at this time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. And I just want it to be setting up these actors for success rather than setting them up to be hyper criticized by everybody, myself included.
And hell yeah, I'm the mother princess.
Now, if you're looking for a great example of the kind of colorblind theater casting that I do think works, that can be found in The Prince, the recorded play written by Abigail Thorne, aka Philosophy Tube, that is now streaming on Nebula. It is an amazing production that explored Shakespeare, gender, sexuality, identity, and the play was funded and produced because of Nebula. Now the streaming platform will take their cast recording, their professional recording of it, and put it on the platform, bringing an extraordinary piece of queer content to people who would not have been able to see it otherwise. And that's not the only great original you can get on Nebula.
That's why I'm making my new show, Unrated, where I explore the true history of sex and sexuality in film.
And oh, wow, is that a video about the theme song for Charmed by me? Neat. When you sign up for Nebula, you get access to all of this, early access to videos from some of your favorite content creators, including myself, extra credits, and their series on John Brown, which is aces. And now if you sign up with my link, you get free access to Nebula classes, where our creators host classes on how to be, well, creators. There are a lot of illusions about what creating videos or any kind of product is like, and I feel like the Nebula classes really do their best to synthesize exactly what goes into a massive project, both the micro and the macro, which is a great thing for aspiring creators who want that on top of all the extra content that they're getting on Nebula. You can sign up now using the link down below and continue to not just enjoy works from your favorite creators, but to support them, especially those putting the passion in Passion Project.